Welcome to the Action Network NFL Betting Podcast. I am your host, Chris Raybon, here with my dude, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, Stuckey, as well as our homie, Sean Kerner, coming over from the Fantasy Flex to join us as well. Stuck, what's going on, man?
I'm truly feeling the grind right now. We're doing week 0 college football podcast later today, a couple NFL podcasts. I mean, football, real football, not preseason football. I know you fantasy guys love preseason. But real football for me is like right around the corner. I can taste it. So it's there's just excitement in the air. I'm excited to get the football season started.
Oh, yeah. And Sean, we have some player movement as we speak going on. I'm going to jump off this pod right after and update Sony Michel to the Rams. But yeah, it's that time of year.
Yeah, I've been loving preseason. Obviously, I've been betting on these player props on Prize Picks, but just betting on preseason has been a moneymaker. I think I'm like 10-1 now. Just by doing all the projections, knowing the rotations. It's been so easy to bet in game, kind of knowing which team is going to start, evaluating quarterbacks or running backs. So I don't want this preseason to end, but I'm with Stuckey. The grind has begun. And yeah, I am looking forward for the season start, and it's right around the corner.
Oh, yeah. And today we're going to talk about the NFC East and the NFC North win totals. We'll preview each team, and we're going to jump right in here with the Dallas Cowboys. Stuck, I'll start with you. What is your outlook for the Cowboys this season with Dak Prescott? We think he's returning from injury. He's had a little shoulder issue, but Dak is back, and maybe Zeke gets on track. What do you think of the Cowboys this year?
Yeah, it's the biggest question is going to be that quarterback. That recent report is Dak Prescott fully healthy. Well, he's not going to be fully healthy maybe all year. What exactly does that mean? So trying to decipher exactly what that means, I think, is the toughest part about projecting Dallas, because if he is healthy, and you presume that Dallas's offensive line will be much healthier than it was last year, then this is clearly the most talented and I think best team in the division. There are certainly question marks on the defensive side of the ball. Dan Quinn comes in. What is it? I've been watching Hard Knocks. I swear he says fuck every other word. But they're going to be playing a lot of like single high safety, heavy nickel. He's a cover 3 guy. He says he's more multiple now, but who doesn't? But I have questions about the run defense. I like the addition of Michael Parsons. They're going to use him all over. But the defense is, there's a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball. But the offense is going to score with anyone if Dak is healthy. I project them, at 9.3 wins, their win, which is right about what their win total is, when you include juice. But I don't know how to account for the health of Dak. So it's a wait and see team for me early on. They do have a tricky start to their schedule. Obviously, they start with the Bucs and then a finish as well. 3 straight road games, weeks 13 through 15, 2 of which are in the division. 4 of their final 5 games are in the division. We're talking about the NFC East here. One of the, I think more than any other division in the league, they have all of their games are at the end. So, if these teams are close, a key injury here or there, who's healthy at the end of the year might determine this division, which hasn't seen a back-to-back winner since 2004.
That is just absolutely absurd, but I'm not surprised at all, given what we've seen out of these NFC East teams. Sean, what about you? What do you think of the Cowboys? Is this a wait-and-see kind of thing for you too, given the uncertainty with Dak Prescott?
I think it is, but I am bullish on them. They had the 5th worst injury luck last year. Obviously, no injury was more important than Dak Prescott. The offensive line was plagued with injury. Both should be healthy starting week 1. We'll have to wait and see on Dak's shoulder. But I do expect this offense to be elite. As Stuckey mentioned, the defense is the main question mark. I think specifically cornerback. And it was a real shame that they weren't able to have Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn fall to them in the draft. So they kind of had to settle for Micah Parsons, who could be special. But they're going to need Trayvon Diggs to step up in year 2. And then, second round pick Kelvin Joseph may have to start out of the gate over Anthony Brown. So, the defense is the question mark, but offense is more predictive. Sometimes you can get lucky and the defense can come together. So that's why I am bullish on them. But the total seems a bit juiced up because the Cowboys are a public team. They're typically going to take more action on the over. So I think because of that, I do lean towards the under here. And I think with Dak potentially not being 100% going into this season, I think that does, it makes a stronger case to bet the under. But this is still sort of a wait and see for me as well.
And the obligatory, what is the Cowboys? What's your rating in terms of the Cowboys' strength of schedule?
Oh, now you want to know the strength of schedule.
coming at you early, yeah. Coming early with it.
I'm at 14.
Yeah, I got league average 16. So none, and that's factoring in that the NFC has one less home game than the AFC. So I forgot to mention that last pod that the AFC, strength of schedule is probably boosted a bit by the additional home game. But yeah, I have Cowboys middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think when you look at their schedule after that Tampa Bay game, it gets dramatically easier until the bye. You got at the Chargers, home for Philly, home for Carolina, home for the Giants, at New England, then a bye. Then you go to Minnesota, Denver before playing Atlanta and then KC. So not too bad, but I do think it comes down to Dak. I don't think the defense is going to make drastic strides. They have a ton of safeties and they'll play more 3 safety looks, and it should be better than last year. Defense does regress to the mean, as you pointed out, Sean. So the Cowboys, I am bullish on them, but there's just a little too much uncertainty here. Heading into the season, the Cowboys are 2-3 toward their win total since Dak took over, and it's kind of been up and down with them. And I kind of feel like it's the exact same situation. So this is not my favorite team to bet in the division. There's 2 teams that I like betting in this division, and one of them is the Giants, and their win total is 7.5. I like the under. Sean, where are you on this Giants team this year?
Yeah, I'm probably with you on the under there. This defense should be above average this year. I mean, that cornerback duo of Adoree Jackson and James Bradbury is pretty damn good. The defensive line.
Is Adoree Jackson a real person though? Are we convinced of that?
He might exist. He might actually exist. Now he's not in the Tennessee
Titans. 2 years straight in Tennessee and never played.
Yeah, we would always get excited and think we had to bump up the Titans a little bit because he was going to come back and their defense always stunk. And then he
never came back.
Never.
Yeah, and I guess he did suffer an ankle sprain today or Wednesday. Yeah, so that was today. So we'll see. But on paper, this defense looks great. Even the offense looks great on paper as well. They should get Saquon Barkley back. Kenny Golladay gives them a true number 1 wideout. Rookie Kadarius Toney should be dangerous with the ball in his hands, but none of them have really practiced much in camp. So, they could get off to a slow start. Plus, I don't trust offensive coordinator Jason Garrett to really maximize the potential of this offense. And the offensive line should be a huge concern. So there's too many red flags for the Giants. I'm with you, Ray-Ban. I lean the under 7.5 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think any conversation about the Giants has to start with the offensive line. Forget anything on the offensive side looking good on paper when they have the league's worst offensive line. And really, there's nothing they can do. I don't think there's nothing they can do to fix this. Guys were
they didn't try, right?
Right. No, I mean, guys were tired. They've drafted poorly. It's just been a real shit show on this O-line. And in camp, they were supposed to make strides and kind of get things sorted out. And it's only gotten worse. And there's been no positive reports out of camp. There's been, PFF still has them ranked dead last. Yeah. I mean, I'm just really worried about this O-line stuck. Where are you on this New York Giants football team?
Yeah, I mean, they were just hoping and praying that the offensive line was going to get a lot better just from experience. I mean, it's still, I think it's probably the youngest offensive line in the NFL. It was awful last year. It should, be awful again this year. Maybe by the end of the year, they'll start to come together. And then next year, some of these young pieces will fall into place. But they just haven't drafted well at the position, despite spending, a lot of premium picks on the offensive line. There's a lot of weapons on the offense. So if they can block, it's an exciting offense. Kerner, you mentioned a lot of the different pieces, and they obviously had Galladay. You get Barkley back. The defense, I'm a huge Adoree Jackson fan, which is why Raybon and I talked about him so much. When he's healthy, I think that he's, an upper echelon corner. The defense isn't going to get much pressure, which is a problem off the edge, but you're not really going to be able to run against them up the middle. You're just not going to get anything up the middle against that defensive line. Lawrence, Williams, Shelton to replace Tomlinson. So, I think they have very underrated safeties. Peppers and McKinney are underrated safety duo. So there's some pieces I like about the defense. I wish they would just get a little more pressure. It would also help out the secondary. But I'm at about 7.2. Right on the strength of schedule I have is like number 7. So I have them actually with a pretty tough schedule. I mean, the road games out of division: Chiefs, Bucks, Saints, Chargers, Dolphins, and Bears. That's not, no real gimmies there at all. And I hate betting on this team. I mean, Gettleman is just, and Gettleman, you have Jason Garrett, you have Judge. They're too conservative at times. They don't believe in analytics. It's just not a team I like to bet. And some people are saying they're a sleeper. You can really say anyone's a sleeper in the NFC East besides the Cowboys. Like, you can make a case for anybody. I just can't get behind this team because mainly of their offensive line. I think that's going to be their downfall. But I'm right on the win total around 7. So it's a pass for me.
Yeah, and I think the way to bet this team is, first of all, I do like the under. I just think that the offensive line is going to be too much to overcome. Daniel Jones is still not a proven quarterback. He's not a, top half of the league quarterback anyway. So even though you got the weapons, there's no guarantee that pays off. I do think they're well coached on defense. I do like Patrick Graham and what he's able to do. I think the defense got better. This strikes me probably for the second year in a row as a team that you can bet unders on, because I think they're going to surprise, some people with the defense and stay in games. But what's going to happen is, they're going to get the ball, and then Daniel Jones is going to take like 2 sacks and a 3-play drop, 3 and out. And then they're just going to punt, back and forth. So they went 3-13 toward the over last year. So 13-3 toward the under. Did the Giants in 2020. I think you're going to see another pretty profitable season for the unders with this Giants team, the way it's setting up. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's a good point that the defense is well coached. It's zone heavy defense. And if they could find like Ojulari or someone can just provide an additional, punch off of the edge, this defense becomes even better. But I agree. There's a lot of coaching and personnel things that you can question with the Giants, but the defense is definitely well schooled.
Yeah. And I think overall, Joe Judge, I think he's a decent coach. Jason Garrett obviously raises question marks and whatnot, but yeah, the defense is going to be the calling card of this team. And if you are betting the over for some crazy reason, that's what you're hoping for, that this defense really takes a big step forward. Let's move on to the Washington football team, because this is the other team in this division that I like betting. This one actually toward the over. I like some upside shots on Washington as well to win the division. I'm not really a big on betting teams like that to go to the Super Bowl, but I do like, win the division. I like over the 8.5 win total. I think this defense is going to be very, very good. They've proven they can win with, or at least stay in games with, a variety of shitty quarterbacks last year. So even if Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't make it through the year, I think there's still a decently high floor because of the defense. But Stuck, what do you think of this Washington football team?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you, make a case for the under, but I like some of the moves they made in the offseason, like drafting Davis to help their linebacker group, which is one of the weaknesses of the defense. You had, William Jackson to pair with Fuller at corner. You're going to get Collins back at safety. Then obviously the defensive line is arguably the best in the NFL. The Giants have not successfully drafted offensive linemen. Washington has spent 3 or 4 years with high picks on the defensive line, and it's clearly paid off. With the latest being Chase Young, but you have Sweat, Allen, Payne. I mean, you can go on and on and on. So the defense should be really good again. The offense adds a couple weapons that's going to make, it's not just McLaurin and then who else is going to help. You actually have, Johnny Brown now, Curtis Samuel, so you have some help. I don't trust Fitzpatrick. I mean, I feel like he's the guy when he just needs to be the guy that comes in for a 5-week break, and then he kind of sparks the team. And last year, his numbers were extremely lucky. Big regression candidate, especially under pressure. We went over that in the AFC pod. He was number one rated quarterback in the NFL against pressure last year. I can't see that happening again. And for his career, he's been pretty bad under pressure. And this defense might be a tad overrated. Let me just show you in 2021, here are the quarterbacks they face out of division. Herbert, Matt Ryan, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Carr, and then Prescott twice in the division. Those were 8 of the top 11 passers last year, and then you had Prescott twice. Last year, here are the quarterbacks they beat. Wentz, Dalton twice, with 2 offensive lines that were devastated by injuries. Finley, they beat the Bengals. It was the game that Burrow got hurt. Bengals were leading at the half. Finley came in. They beat Finley with that Bengals offensive line. Big Ben, 48-year-old Big Ben in that offensive line. Nick Mullins. And then in the last game of the year, Sudfeld, because the Eagles with that offensive line bench, they didn't want to win. So Wentz, Dalton twice, Finley, Big Ben, Mullins, and Sudfeld. Those were their 7 wins last year. So I think that they benefited from an extremely easy quarterback schedule and some injury. So I don't think that, the pass defense, especially in the back end, was a little overrated. The defensive line is going to get after quarterbacks. It's no doubt one of the best in the NFL. But I make the number, the over-under is 8.5, juice to the over. I'm like a little below 8. So I actually like the under in Washington.
Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, any Ryan Fitzpatrick-led team is going to be pretty volatile by nature. But I do love the weapons around him with Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, and I think Antonio Gibson's going to have a big season. So this offense can be sneaky good. Raybon, you mentioned it. I think this defense does provide a high floor. It's going to keep him in games, even if Fitzpatrick were to struggle. They're loaded up front. I love replacing Ronald Darby with William Jackson at corner. This is a team I'm in line with the market, but because they have, a high floor, I'm okay with taking the over still. Even if Ryan Fitzpatrick struggles, they have Taylor Heineke, who could step in. I mean, he had that one game last year where he looked great. So who knows with him, but they could have a solid backup this year. Whereas, they've been able to win games with Dwayne Haskins and Alex Smith the past couple seasons. I took this line, I think it was like mid-June, the over 8 was minus 130. So now it's gone up a half win. So that's why I'm staying away. But I think if I were to go any direction, it'd probably be on the over just based on this defense. I agree with some of the things Stuckey said, but I think, on paper, this defense is pretty elite. So that's why I'm willing to still take the over here.
Yeah, and it is a volatile team. It's going to be a volatile team. Like I think that's very true because when you look at, first of all, this team last year, they won on opening day, then lost 5 straight, then lost 2 straight and won 4 straight. Like everything was a streak. Fitzpatrick is obviously volatile, and this team I think is like it's kind of towing the line between a team that could go 3-14 if everything goes wrong, to 14-3 if everything goes right. So I do agree that they're volatile, which is why I said I like things like the division, not just the straight up win total. What were you saying, Stuff?
Yeah, one thing to mention is that the offensive line is actually pretty sneaky good. Last year it was pretty good. The interior is good, and they lost Morgan Moses, but all the reports are Cosme, their first-round draft pick, looks really good. The kid out of Texas. So if he can solidify that right tackle position, their offensive line should be pretty good again, and that will help Fitzpatrick. I will say, I just wanted to get this in there. I actually have Washington as the hardest schedule.
Here we go. Here we go. Now they do have a pretty tough schedule. That's another reason why I think they're a volatile team. I got some of their win total at 8. I think at 8.5 it's a little shakier, but I still think they end up with a winning record. I think they have a very good chance of being the best team in this division and beating at least their division opponents. So I mean, the thing about it's so interesting with Fitzpatrick too, because there's such a big range of outcomes. But you look at Washington last year, and like Sean, you mentioned Smith and Haskins. I mean, Smith and Haskins were about as bad as you could be. Smith was 6 touchdowns, 8 picks, 5.3 adjusted yards per attempt. Haskins, 5.1 adjusted yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 7 picks. Both had QBRs below 35. And that was 14. That was 12 starts with those two guys. So I think anything that's not those two guys is going to be an improvement. And you're not going to need much with this defense. I think they kind of remind me of the Broncos a little bit. I think the Broncos have a better schedule though. So but this is another team that I think could kind of rest on their defense and surprise some people.
Are you at number one? I was at Pittsburgh at the hardest. I must have changed something when I was.
Yeah, I have Steelers as the hardest. I have the football team 8th. But yeah, if you look at their schedule, it's very tough. So, it's probably pretty close between those top 8 teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see the case for them having the toughest schedule.
Yeah, they have a murderer's row. Week 6, KC. Week 7, Green Bay at Lambeau. Week 8, Denver and Mile High. By Tampa Bay. Like that. If they can get through that and win even like a game, they might be in good shape.
That's when it might be better to have evolved a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick as opposed to a high floor, low ceiling guy like Alex Smith. I think if you're able to get a good game out of Fitzpatrick, you can beat anybody. So that's why I think it does. I like the blend of a volatile quarterback like Fitzy and a high floor defense for those games.
What Alex Smith were you watching? He was low floor, low ceiling.
He's low floor, low ceiling. I understand that, but not as bad as Haskins. I would say Smith was an upgrade over Haskins.
Yeah, it's funny because now Haskins looks good on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and this is another NFC East thing though. Like they go to Vegas week 13, and here's their final 14, 15, 16. Their final 5 games are home against the Cowboys, at the Eagles, at the Cowboys, home against the Eagles, at the Giants. So they play 5 of their 6 division games in the final 5 weeks. Is that right?
Yep.
So like if they don't have a big lead and someone's hurt, that's why the NFC East is going to be fascinating division to be, because they all play each other the final 5, 6 weeks. If you're 3 games back, you can still win the division. You get division wins and make up ground quick.
Yeah, Washington's probably going to need it after that, middle of the schedule. I think they can start strong and they can end strong. It's really that middle that worries me. Let's move on to the Eagles, though. The Philadelphia Eagles, subject to a lot of trade rumors. Jalen Hurts set to be the quarterback. He's dealing with an illness in the preseason, but he looks ready to go. They draft Devontae Smith. Quez Watkins is flashing in camp. The O-line should be better with Mailata coming on. The defense, I think, will be a little better. The injury luck will be better. The coaching will be, we think, better because it got really bad, even though Doug Peterson's had some success in the past. It got bad last year. So, Sean, what do you make of this Eagles team? Because there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of new pieces, but at the same time, the roster is still kind of similar to the one that we've seen the last few years.
Yeah, this team certainly has a wide range of outcomes, and it really comes down to Jalen Hurts, right? Will he improve as a passer in year 2? Even if he doesn't, he's so dangerous with his legs. It allows him to extend plays and maybe overcome his accuracy issues if they continue this year. He probably won't have a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen type breakout season, but I think he could surprise people. Like you mentioned, they added Devonta Smith. Jalen Reagor could break out in year 2. It looks like they're going to keep Zach Ertz. So, they have a pretty good tight end duo there. The defensive line is still the strength of this defense. They really do need Darius Slay to stay healthy. You don't want to start testing their depth at cornerback. I think with improved injury luck this year, I think they were 3rd in terms of the bad injury luck last year. If they can stay healthy and Jalen Hurts makes a big year 2 leap, they could easily win this division and fly over the total. But there are plenty of scenarios where this all falls apart and we end up seeing Joe Flacco replacing a healthy Jalen Hurts and they finished the basement in this division. So this is a team I don't like betting on. I don't like betting on a team I don't really have a good read on. So I'm in line with this total at 7.5. And this is a pass for me.
Doug, what do you think of this Eagles team?
If I could guarantee the Flacco is going to start, I'll take out some Eagles Super Bowl futures just for pay homage to Joe Flacco getting me a 40-1 Ravens back in 2012. But yes, obviously if that happened, that would be disastrous for the Eagles. But I completely agree. This is a completely wide. The outcomes are so wide with this team. I'm at about 7.5, so I don't see any value in the win total. I did take a shot on them to win the division at plus 550.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like I said, it hasn't, there hasn't been a repeat winner since 2004 in the NFC East. They all play each other at the end of the season. If everything goes right, if Hurts I'm not buying into Hurts yet. I still think he needs another year, but he has the weapons. The offensive line should be better and healthier this year. And I'm a huge, huge Jonathan Gannon fan. He's a Zimmer guy. Zimmer's 4-3 cover too, but Gannon's going to be more cover 3 match. It's all the stuff you saw in the Rams. I mean, everyone loved Brandon Staley. Gannon and Staley were like childhood friends. From what I know, Gannon basically taught Staley a lot of the concepts that he used. Got him his first job too, first main job that led to Staley breaking through in the NFL. So I think that this defense is going to be, just from a scheme perspective, is going to be massively improved. And you can move Maddox to slot now with Nelson on the outside. Slay is kind of over the hill, but I think that they're going to be able to use their pieces in the best way possible, with the defensive line being the strength of that unit. So I think the defense, could take a big step up just because of the scheme change. And I'm a big Gannon fan. You also have, this, and like I said before, last 4 games are all in the division after a bye week, 3 of 4 at home. So if they're in the mix, 3 of 4 at home, you get a bye week, and then last 4 games in the division, who knows? That's why I think it's either, the only way you play this team is to try and, maybe bet an under alt win total, or, bet them to win the division. I think you just try and play on both extremes. The funny thing is, if you look at the schedule, I was betting to win the division. I look at the schedule. It's not unrealistic. They start 0-7. Like, they go at Atlanta, then you're home against San Fran, you're at Dallas, you're home against the Chiefs, you're at Carolina, you're home against the Bucks. I mean, all of these games at home are brutal. You have the Chiefs, the Bucks, the 49ers at home. Then you're at Atlanta, at Dallas, at Carolina. Then you're going out to Vegas. I mean, you're at 0-7. Good night. Turn out the lights. And then you hope you go to Detroit. You have 2 0-7 teams playing each other. So it could go all wrong for the beginning, but I think there is high upside. And 16 of the past 18 seasons, we've had a team go from worst to first. I think this, the NFC East with how wide open it is, and then we already covered the AFC South with how wide open. I think those are the 2 divisions you could possibly target with a long shot. And I did with the Eagles to win the division, but I'm right on par with their win total.
Yeah, I think they have a chance to win that opening game in Atlanta. I just think that Atlanta defense and the depth for the Falcons is weak enough that it could be a big Jalen Hurts game, and they could win a shootout there. So I think it will be like a Eagles season that we see like a bunch of different teams. Like, I think we'll see like the early season, like Jalen Hurts still trying to get acclimated to the scheme and the coaching staff. I think there'll be a point where the offense really goes crazy. I think there'll be a point where the defense plays really well, but there's just so many moving parts that I agree. I don't think there's really a bet here other than an extreme bet with the Eagles, but I do like them. I do like their lines, O-line and D-line. So I'm not opposed to taking some upside bets there, with them just based on that. I think they do have some good things going for them. Let's move on to the NFC North, and we'll start with the Green Bay Packers. The Pack at BetMGM have a win total of 10.5. The under is juiced to -130. Sean, how are you feeling about the Packers with Aaron Rodgers back for at least this year?
Yeah, I'm very bullish on the Packers this year. On our fantasy podcasts, I tend to mention that Aaron Rodgers should see some regression this year, coming off of a 9.1% touchdown rate. Even if he regresses, this offense should still be elite. They have better depth at wide receiver this year. They added Randall Cobb, drafted Amari Rodgers. Devin Funchess returns after opting out last year. He's looked surprisingly good. So I think they're going to be solid there. I think Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon is going to be a lightning and thunder combo at running back. So I love the offense. The offensive line could take a step back. They lost center Corey Linsley to the Chargers. They need second round pick Josh Myers to step in right away. Even if he plays well, it's going to be a downgrade. But overall, I do like the O-line still. And the defense got better towards the end of last season. They ranked 14th in weighted DVOA. So if this defense could just play average, the offense should carry this team. If players like Rashawn Gary continue to improve, if we see Zadarius Smith return to his 2019 form, this defense could be really good. So I like the over 10.5 at plus 110. And if you think of this team from just a roster building perspective, they're elite at the 4 key positions. They have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Devontae Adams at wide receiver, David Bakhtiari at left tackle, and Jair Alexander at cornerback. Those are the 4 critical positions, and they're elite at all 4 of them. So I love this team overall. I just love the over 10.5.
Doug, how you feeling about this Green Bay Packer team with Rodgers back?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Sean. I'm at 10-8, 10-9 projected. So I think the look here is either over or nothing. I mean, I think that their defense could be a lot better than last year. I mean, this is a defense that, they use a ton of dime. They're going to use a lot of 6 defensive backs. You're always going to be able to run on them. It's a run funnel defense. But look, like you said, Zadarius Smith, if he returns to form, you have Preston Smith, who's apparently in shape. He has an incentive-filled contract. So if they can get him to come off the edge and kind of return to form, I love Rashawn Gary. You have a healthy now Kenny Clark in the middle. So there's a lot of pieces that are coming together. The weakest point on this defense, great safeties, arguably the best cover corner in the NFL is the second corner spot. So if Kevin King, apparently he's still in that spot, but they drafted Eric Stokes, who's not too far behind. And Kevin King, obviously he had that, everyone remembers what he did in the NFC Championship game. But if he can either step up or Stokes can, it's really hard to trust a rookie at corner. But if they could figure out that second corner spot, I mean, there's really no weaknesses on this defense other than, you're going to be able to run on them, but they kind of encourage that. They play with, 6 defensive backs most of the time. Barnes and Campbell, it's not the strongest linebacking group on the inside. Weak division, it's Rodgers. They did lose some on the offensive line. You're probably going to have a rookie starting center, but this team develops offensive linemen better than any team in the NFL. I mean, it's amazing. They just get someone, develop him, then he's ready to go. 6 weeks in, plug him in. They don't miss a beat. I mean, Bakhtiari will be big if he's not, fully healthy. So if he's not fully healthy week 1, like he's going to be back. Keep that in mind if you're betting the Packers in the first couple weeks. But yeah, I'm at 10.8, and I think it's over or nothing. Amari Rodgers, they drafted him. I think he could actually help in the return game too, and that's been an area of weakness for them as well. So I think they drafted well. Some pieces on defense that I think can step up, either due to health, incentives, and defense will be even better. And Rodgers is going to have that offense clicking. So yeah, I agree. It's over or nothing.
Yeah, I think this is a strong over as well. You look at the Packers under Matt LaFleur, they're 13-3 in both seasons. With him, Aaron Rodgers in the last 12 years has won double-digit games for the Packers 9 times. The other times he's essentially missed parts of the season. So he's been a really bankable quarterback. I think he's a kind of guy who, given the way he played last year, I think it was really a wake-up call that year before when San Francisco just stomped him in the mouth twice. I think he's playing a little bit better now under pressure. I think he'll be able to alleviate, anything that kind of go or mitigate any issues with the offensive line, which I think will take a step back. But this team has lost 1 division game in the last 2 years under LaFleur. They could be better on defense, as you said, Stuck. So, I like this Packers team. And I don't think people realize, we know the Lions are bad. I think the Bears are actually going to be pretty bad too. So the Vikings, they'll be better. That's the one team that in the division that's beat the Packers over the last 2 years, but I still think you're probably getting 4 wins from the Bears and Lions in that division to get a little head start to that win total of 10.5. So love the over there. Let's move on. Before we get to the Bears, let's go to the Vikings, because the Vikings, I think it's a 2-team race here. And the Vikings, the win total is 9.5 at BetMGM. The under is juiced to -145. Sean, what do you think of that with the juice heavily on the under here?
Yeah, I'm probably in line with the market on this one. I'm projecting them for 9 wins. But I think the defense should bounce back this year. They didn't get a single snap from either Danielle Hunter or Michael Pierce. Both are back this year. They ranked 30th DVOA against the run. They should be much better with Thompson and then Pierce back. They also added Patrick Peterson, who could, have a revival of his career. But either way, Mike Zimmer is going to get the most of this unit. So I expect them to return to above average this year. And then the offense should be fine. Justin Jefferson filled the hole left by Stephon Diggs quite well last year. He looked really good. And, they still have Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen. So I do like this offense. The main issue is the offensive line. Should be an issue, but I think the rest of the team will kind of make up for that. So either way, I do like this team, but I'm in line with the market right here.
Yeah, I think the defense improvement is really going to be key. I mean, they started 1-4 last year, and those 4 losses, they gave up 135 points. And then to close the year, they went 1-3, and they gave up 26, 33, 52, 35 to close.
Yeah, so their weighted DVOA, which measures the end of the season more heavily, they finished 26th in DVOA defense, which is insane for a Zimmer-led team. But yeah, a bounce back would be huge for them.
Stuck, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can expect Mike Zimmer to have this defense, right? I mean, they finished top 5 in efficiency in 2017, 18, 19. They were just crushed by injuries last year. I mean, Pierce opted out. Hunter and Barr were out for the year early on. Hill and Hughes were out for the year, week 4. They had just a bunch of rookies out there, had no idea what they were doing at corner. They had no front 7. You have Kendricks gets hurt after week 12, just crushed by injuries, as bad as it can get. So the defense should be fine. The run defense should really step up. They had Richardson, Tomlinson, they brought Griffin back, and then you get Hunter and Pierce, who didn't play at all last year. So that front 7 should be a lot better. It's going to be an experienced secondary now. It's an aging one, but you're going to have Peterson, Breeland, Alexander, Chris Boyd and Dancer will probably go to 4th and 5th corners. So it's going to be much more experienced. I would have loved Patrick Peterson to go play safety somewhere. His elite man skills are gone, but the secondary is no doubt improved from what they had last year. So overall, the defense will be a lot better. The biggest question here is their offensive line. You really only trust Brian O'Neill. It's really young everywhere else. That might end up being their downfall, but the defense will keep them in games. They have an identity on offense. They have 2 good receivers, a veteran quarterback, and one of the best running backs in the NFL. So they'll be around. They'll be competitive in games. I'm at about, this win total basically is 9 if you account for the juice. I'm at like 8-ish. So nothing here for me. One thing to note, though, Dan Bailey's gone. Their kicking situation was awful last year. That can only help.
Yeah, that was just a nightmare with Bailey, and it would seem like every week he had this stretch where it was just like 2 missed kicks a week or something like that. So the defense was uncharacteristically poor. The kicking game was poor. Before we move on, I do think it's interesting though, because in the fantasy community, there's a lot of talk of regression with pretty much every key member of the Vikings offense. So I just wonder, like, how would that all work? Because you got Kirk Cousins, who threw 31 touchdowns last year. You have Adam Thielen, who caught 14 touchdowns last year. Justin Jefferson put up a 1,400-yard season as a rookie. That would be hard to match, in any year for any receiver. And then Dalvin Cook touched about 356 times and gained over 1,900 yards from scrimmage. I mean, like, is anyone going to regress? Is no one going to regress? Because they only really give, like, those are their guys on offense.
I'm guilty of saying that Adam Thielen's going to regress almost every one of our pods. And that's in the touchdown department. I think those touchdowns will still be there. They're just going to go, a little bit of those are going to go to Irv Smith, who I'm really high on. I think he's going to have a breakout season in place of Kyle Rudolph. So I just think if anything, those Thielen touchdowns, some of those will go to Irv Smith this year.
And I misspoke. I said 35 touchdowns for Kirk Cousins last season.
Irv Smith's actually a really, really important player for that offense. There was a lot of times last year that you could just tell that Cousins and Rudolph had a good rapport, whether it was like a big third down in the red zone or a third down, in a key situation. He would always look for him and come through. Irv Smith has to pick up that slack, and he's talented enough to do so, but he's going to be a big piece this year.
Yeah, and I think the Vikings are just hoping they don't have to score as much as they did last year to stay in games. I mean, with that defense getting ugly, that's what was really going on, because I am a little concerned about the depth on offense, just because it's so locked into those top three guys that, if Thielen's really slowing down or he misses time, really have nothing in terms of, the wide receivers. I know you have Smith Marset as a rookie, but they're talking about KJ Osborne as the number 3 wideout. So they really have nothing there. Dalvin Cook, we know running backs are risky in terms of injuries when they touch the ball, 350 plus times. So, and one of their rookie backs also got hurt. So, they still have Madison, but it's just, it could get a little thin there on that offense if one of the key skill guys misses any amount of time. So they're gonna have to lean on that defense a lot more. So I'm not betting the over here, but I wouldn't be surprised for a pretty good season from them, just because I think it's a 2-team race in this division.
Yeah, I would, from a fantasy perspective, and that's not my area forte, I would guess they all regress, because last year was a lot to do with the game script.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were giving up 40, 45 points, a lot of times coming from behind, and you're just chucking the ball. You're in these shootouts. You're gonna see a lot more Vikings Zimmer type game scripts here, games in the in the 20s instead of the 40s.
Yeah, we know he loves to run the ball when they have the lead and when the defense is playing better. So that's partly why I do think that the offense will regress.
Yeah, the defense was 27th in yards allowed, and the offense was 4th in yards gained. So, as the defense improves, I think you're going to see, just a lower offensive volume in Vikings games. So maybe this may be a profitable under team early in the year before the market fully catches on. We'll have to see about that, but do expect the defense to rebound here. Let's move on to the Chicago Bears. Their win total is 7.5 at BetMGM, juiced to the under at -130 and stuck. I'm out on Chicago. I think this team is in for a big letdown. Matt Nagy has kind of kept them in that 500 range all throughout his tenure. But I look at this team, I'm worried about the defense. I think it lost, it's not going to be as good as it has been. I worry about the O-line. I think it's one of the bottom 5 to 7 units in the league. And then you look at the schedule and the quarterbacks they're facing, and I mean, it's going to be tough. I mean, you got Rodgers, you got Brady, you got Lamar, Big Ben, Kyler, Russell Wilson. You start out with the Rams on the road, who got the Browns on the road in the first 3 weeks. I struggle to see how this team gets over this win total. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tweeted out after that preseason game, turns out Mitch Bortles is elite. The problem is just Matt Nagy. I mean, to watch Mitch Bortles shred them was something. So yeah, I mean, I think they're in a mess of trouble. I mean, just not only this year and the team. I mean, they're cap strapped. The picks that they have. I mean, the offensive. Let's start at the offensive line. They draft Jenkins. He has back surgery. He's out. I mean, Jason Peters, you're going to rely on him at left tackle. Afedi, they're all hurt too and coming back from injury, moving around. They're building no chemistry in camp. It's just a mess. And then are they going to start Dalton because they don't trust the offensive line? They don't trust Fields yet. I think that would be a mistake. I mean, don't you want Fields' legs? I don't know. But regardless, I don't trust this offensive line or Matt Nagy. And then on the defensive side, you got a new defensive coordinator, and you will get Hicks back healthy and Eddie Goldman back, and Nichols. It's a good defensive front. It's a strength of the team, but the rest of the defense is mad. This isn't a vintage. This isn't your older brother's Bears team. I mean, Roquan Smith, I love, but Trevathan, aging. I mean, Mack is aging. Their corners, Jalen Johnson, I mean, huge injury risk. This is a guy who's hurt every year, but he played well as a rookie. He's second-year corner. He's your number one corner. It looks like Kendall Vildor might be your second corner, 5th-round draft pick out of Georgia Southern, I think, 2 years ago. You brought in Artie Burns and Desmond Trufant. I mean, it's Duke Shelley. I mean, the corners are just, ugh. So, it's an aging D, dicey corners. You're going to Dalton or a rookie QB with a disastrous offensive line, and Matt Nagy's still the coach. Tough schedule as well. The depth issues. Also, they have depth issues. So, they traded so many top picks for some of these players that they just don't have a lot of depth. So, especially on the offensive line and other positions where you have an injury. I mean, a corner goes down, a safety goes down. It's bad. So, yeah, I'm selling the Bears. Where am I? I'm project 6.6. So yeah, I'm very low. I'm very low on the Bears. I'm on the under here.
Yeah, that's around where I got it too. And this has been my favorite under still on the board, I think, because I do think it's about a win off. Sean, where are you on the 2021 Bears?
Yeah, so I think the defense should still be pretty good. Getting Eddie Goldman back is huge. But as Stuckey mentioned, the cornerback depth is a concern, especially, they had to release Kyle Fuller. So if they struggle, this defense could be average, and then they're in trouble. And the offensive line is brutal. I thought Tevin Jenkins was going to be pretty solid as a rookie, but now that he's out for the season, they're in trouble. I think Fields, his scrambling ability may be able to function behind a terrible offensive line. Stuckey, our boy Jimmy Graham, is already comparing Fields to Russell Wilson. We know that he's been able to produce behind a bad O-line. So I think if anything, it makes a compelling case to start Fields out of the gate. But yeah, either way, this team has a very low floor. Although they were able to win 8 games last year with Mitch Trubisky. So that's why I thought that maybe the over might be good, but after watching Mitch tear it up last week in preseason, maybe he wasn't the concern. So yeah, the coaching staff is in trouble. This could spiral out of control. So even though I'm sort of in line with this 7.5, I'm staying away because there's too many outs for this under. It could get really bad.
What are you projecting? Who starts? I mean, I would assume Nagy's going to make the wrong decision. He's going to start Dalton until week 8.
Yeah, we have to go. Yeah, we have to go with what he's saying. He's saying Dalton, but I'm saying that he's essentially going to get forced to play Fields. I'm guessing by week 3. Like the crowd is not going to allow them to keep trotting Dalton out there.
And let's remember too that even if Justin Fields, and he should be an upgrade, if he's not an upgrade over Andy Dalton, there's bigger problems in Chicago than the number of ones that we've already laid out there. But rookie quarterbacks over the last decade, first round picks in their first year have just a 38% winning percentage. So that the expectations still have to be held in check, even if Fields does take over. And let's not forget, we talked about this all beginning of the year last year. This was such a fraudulent team to even get to, 5-1? Like they come from behind against the Lions. They barely beat the Giants on that, in the last second. They come from behind against the Falcons and barely win. Then they get that Bucs win where Tom Brady forgot how to play football for a second. And then they beat the Teddy Bridgewater Panthers. Then they lose 6 straight. And then they close the season and make a playoff run because they get to play the Texans, who they thrashed 38-7, the Vikings, who had nobody on defense, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars, who they thrashed 41-17. Like, this team, there's nothing to hang your hat on with this team, even going back to last year. And now I think they're going to be worse. So yeah, this is an under for me. I'm just hoping Justin Fields gets his reps in because they need to go to him very soon.
Didn't they bench Trubisky last year when they were 3-0?
Yeah, I mean, they seem like did they bench him in week 1?
That happened.
They benched him in week 1, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, this team, they've been hanging on by a thread. I can't believe they made the playoffs last year. Of course, they got there and scored 9 points against the New Orleans Saints. So that tells you all you need to know.
Let's not talk about how they got the 9 points.
Jimmy Walk-Off. They
really scored 3 points.
Oh man, I can't believe Jimmy Graham's still around. I can't believe he put up 8 touchdowns last year. That's something positive for Chicago. But yeah, I think it's going to be a rough year. I just look up and down that roster, look at the schedule. They play the hardest schedule by the Athletics quarterback tiers. So, they have all these scouts and personnel men around the NFL rank all the quarterbacks and put them in tiers. And then they kind of use a composite score to look at the schedules. And Chicago has the toughest one. And the biggest difference between their opposing quarterbacks and their quarterbacks, Dalton, Foles, and Fields. So again, you have to keep your expectations in check with him. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tough year. Speaking of tough years, let's finish this out with the Detroit Lions, who are just in a bind. It seems like their win total is 4.5. The over is actually juiced to -150. But I mean, stuck this Lions team. There's another team with just not much there. I mean, you got Jared Goff and Okuda, maybe. I mean, what are you looking at with this Lions team?
Okuda was. You better hope Okuda's something. He was arguably the worst corner in the NFL.
Right? Yeah, last year. Exactly.
It's hard to project. It's hard to expect much from rookie corners, but he was awful. I mean, they couldn't have him on the field. It's this team is basically an offensive line. I mean, Dan Campbell, that's who he wants it to be. It's actually a really good offensive line on paper.
If you combine the Lions and the Giants, you might get a 500 team.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Especially if Sewell pans out at right tackle. I mean, you move Vaitai in, you got Ragnall, Jackson, and Decker. I mean, that's a really good offensive line. I don't know who you're throwing it to. I hate Jared Goff. I mean, you know this. I think he's awful. I think his hand needs to be held by Sean McVay to do anything, and he can't be under pressure. The good thing is he might not be under a lot of pressure, but I don't really know who he's throwing to. I don't think the scheme is going to be – I don't think he's going to be very – I mean, Anthony Lynn's the offensive coordinator. I don't think it's going to be the same situation where he was with the Rams. The defense, you bring in Aaron Glenn to be defensive coordinator. They're going to shift to a 3-4. Split safeties. You could probably expect them to be more aggressive. They're probably going to blitz a lot more. And which is a good thing because they just played basic man. They basically just sat in basic cover one. They were the most predictable defense in the NFL under Patricia. That's all they did. Basic cover one, did nothing else. So they need to find a way to force turnovers. You're going to move Akora and Flowers to the outside of that 3-4. So maybe they're probably going to play a lot more zone too. I think it's a good thing. So maybe they get a bump from a scheme perspective, but who are the corners that you're trusting here? I mean, you're going to really need Okuda to step up. And I don't see it. So this is a team that I haven't seen it yet. This is a team that is really weak at quarterback, at wide receiver, and cornerback. That's a disaster in today's NFL. It's a good offensive line, which helps, but other than that, there's not much here. Maybe, they can get a bump from a scheme perspective, but I'm not in love with Dan Campbell. I'm not in love with Jared Goff. It's home non-division games against, San Fran, Baltimore, Cincy, Philly, and Arizona. So maybe there's potential for some wins there. On the road, you're going Rams, Steelers, Browns, Broncos, Falcons, Seahawks. So, I mean, it looks like 3-8 ceiling out of division. So can they go 3-3 in the division? I don't see it. This is on our win total podcast earlier in the year. I played Denver over 7 and the Lions under 5 were my two bets pre-draft and pre-everything. So I do have a position on under 5. I actually don't like it as much as I did then. I still show value, but and I have the Bears under 2, and I hate going 2 unders in the same division. But there's some correlation there. But I do show value on both. I already have a position on under Lions. If I had to choose, I'd go under Bears now with updated numbers. But yeah, I'm selling this team. It should be a bad football team this year.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that because I think, as I mentioned at the top, this is a 2-team race in the top of that division. There's a big split in between, but Sean, the under is juiced to +120 at BetMGM with 4.5 as the win total. I mean, is that enticing at all? I know you're not supposed to really attack these lower win totals. There's not as much room, I think, sometimes. But is that enticing to you at all?
Of course it's enticing. Just
That's what
the
I thought.
potential for an implosion here is pretty high. This is one of the worst teams on paper. Head coach Dan Campbell is a bit of a mystery. I doubt he's capable of getting the most of a weak roster. And Stuckey mentioned they have a really good offensive line. But I'm not sure this power football break kneecap style is going to be good when you're trailing. I mean, they're going to have an effective passing attack. And, this is arguably the worst wide receiver depth chart in the league. So Goff's going to have to lean on tight end TJ Hawkinson and rookie Amon St. Brown. There's not much to like about this team. And they really do need Jeffrey Okudah to step up in year two. They need to fill that hole left by Darius Slay. You need a shutdown corner in this division. They have to go up against Allen Robinson twice, Devontae Adams twice, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson twice. So that's a pretty big concern. And they have one of the tougher schedules in the league. They don't get to play themselves. So they have the second hardest strength of schedule. But yeah, there's so much potential for implosion here that I'm definitely interested in taking the under, especially at plus 125.
Yeah, the biggest worry, if I'm betting a Lions under, is that they beat the Bears twice, because that would kind of throw a wrench in things. I think that would be a little bit of a sweat.
The worry is Jared Goff might be too good to be on a 4 wins or less team, but I'm with Becky. I don't see that, so that's why the potential.
Didn't Jared Goff go 0-7 as a rookie with he went 0-7 as a rookie. So yeah, he's I know it's rookie year, but
head coach. So yeah, maybe he is, he needs Campbell to be a functioning head coach. Who knows about that though? I
mean, I'm not knocking Campbell, but this is a pretty disastrous Fisher-like team in other aspects. So Jared Goff is not gonna play you out of the cellar. Like Jared Goff is gonna operate an offense in good conditions like he did under Sean McVay, and still struggle at times with pressure and different things. But he's not going to lift you. He's not going to put you on his back and lift a poorly talented team out. So Goff wouldn't be I wouldn't be worried about Goff, I guess. I would just be worried about they get a couple wins against the Bears. Maybe they beat the Bengals or something. And then you got 3 wins and then it's a sweat. So that's the only thing I'd worry about, but I'd lean toward the under too, because I think it's a top heavy division with Green Bay and Minnesota. All right. So before we get out of here, let's recap with our best bets, our top under and our top over for the NFC East or the NFC North. Stuckey, I'll start with you.
Yeah. Favorite under, I'm going with the Chicago Bears under 7.5 wins. This team is just a mess from its cap situation to the coaching. Look, the offensive line is a mess, which I think is ultimately going to be their downfall, whether they play Justin Fields or Andy Dalton. I'm not a fan of Matt Nagy. On the defensive side of the ball, that's been their strength in recent years, but it's an aging defense. It's an aging group of linebackers. I know the defensive line is strong, but take a look at the cornerbacks. You better hope Jalen Johnson stays healthy in his second year, because, they might have a 5th round corner out of Georgia Southern that you took in 2020 as your starting number 2 after losing Fuller. So not a buyer in the corner group. It's an aging defense, mess of an offensive line, dicey quarterback situation, and just a poorly coached team. I'm going under on the Chicago Bears. As far as my over, I don't have any win total overs, but I took a flyer on the Philadelphia Eagles plus 550 to win the NFC East. Haven't had a back-to-back winner in the NFC since 2004. So you can cross off the Washington football team. And, in 16 of the past 18 NFL seasons, we've had a team go from worst to first in a division. Maybe it's the Eagles. Look, I think that the coaching change is going to be a positive, especially on the defensive side of the ball with Jonathan Gannon. I think they'll get a scheme bump similar to what you saw with the Rams. Offensive line will be healthier. They obviously have a lot of weapons. If Jalen Hurts can take that next step and progress, look, there's a high ceiling here. And who knows, maybe they end up trading for a quarterback. And I'd love it with the schedule. They get a bye week, and then their final 4 games are all interdivision games. 3 of them are at home. So I like the way the schedule sets up. If they're in it at the end, they're going to have a shot to make up ground and potentially steal what could be a weak division. Cowboys clearly the class of it, but if Dak Prescott isn't healthy, this thing's wide open. I think the Eagles, which have a very low floor and a high ceiling, wide range of outcomes, take a shot on the win division.
All right, Sean Stuckey likes the Bears under 7.5 wins and the Eagles over 7.5 wins, more so to win the division. But where are you going?
So I like the Lions under 4.5 wins at plus 125. You know, the O-line could be the strength of this team, but that's about it. This is one of the worst rosters on paper. New head coach Dan Campbell is pretty unproven. I doubt he's going to be able to maximize the talent on this weak roster. The potential for implosion here is high. They have the second toughest schedule according to my strength of schedule rankings. So I love the under here at 4.5 at plus 125. For the over, I like the Packers to go over their win total at 10.5. That's plus 110 right now. You know, Aaron Rodgers is entering potentially his final season in Green Bay. I think he's going to want to go out with a bang and have another MVP-like performance. You know, this team from a roster building standpoint is elite. They have, elite players at the 4 key positions. Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Devontae Adams at wide receiver, David Bakhtiari at left tackle, and Jair Alexander at cornerback. So I love the makeup of this roster. Their defense only needs to be average for them to win games, and I think they could be sneaky good this year. So it's a team that has a very high floor, high ceiling combo. I love the over 10.5 wins here at plus 110.
And I will close it up by going with the Bears under as well. I think that's the best bet of the 8 teams that we talked about in the NFC East and NFC North. They have a bottom 5 O-line rated by Pro Football Focus. They have the toughest slate of opposing quarterbacks, and rookie first-round quarterbacks have a sub 40% win rate in year 1. So Justin Fields likely won't be the savior, especially with all the glaring holes on this roster. My favorite over is the Packers as well, but Sean broke it down. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, 13-3 his last 2 years over Matt LaFleur. So I'll give you guys another best bet, and it's another under, and it's the Giants. The Giants have the worst O-line in the league, and I think they're the second best bet for me after the Bears under among these 2 divisions. Just a team that's going to face a decently tough schedule, not a top-tier quarterback. Yes, they have some weapons, and it looks good on paper, but I don't think they'll have enough on the offensive line to be competitive and win games. And that's the thing that's what really sinks teams is O-line play when everything else looks good on paper. So I'd be very wary about the Giants, and I love their under 7.5. So that's going to do it for part 1 of our NFC win totals podcast on the Action Network NFL podcast. You can find Stuckey on Twitter at Stuckey2 and Sean on Twitter at _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. You can find us all at those same handles in the Action Network app, the award-winning Action Network app as well. And be sure to check out actionnetwork.com for all of our betting and fantasy football content. Until next time, let's get this shmoney.